Everyone to today's webinar. It's so wonderful to have you here with us today. We have an amazing webinar here for you on USDA resources in agriculture to provide supportive options for Native farmers and ranchers in the time of COVID-19. And the panelists that we have here to present will be sharing tons of great information. We will have 4 presentations, one from Diane Kulo from USDA, Ted Bulow from USDA, Esther Lynn from USDA, and Zach Ducheneau from IAC. We will have them each do a presentation, and we will have a few, about 20 minutes of questions for the panelists, and then we'll open it to Q&A with the rest of the group. So welcome. Next. I'm Lanalle Smith. I am a program manager with First Nations Oweesta Corporation, and I will be your facilitator today. And I think we'll hand this over to Diane.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Let me just check and make sure that the audio is clear.
You're good, Diane.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, Lanalle, and I want to thank Oweesta for the opportunity to participate. USDA as a department, as well as the staff here and the other staff that you're even not going to hear from today, are completely dedicated to making sure that we continue to work with you to provide access and information on a daily basis. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. My name is Diane Kulo. I am the Director of the Office of Tribal Relations within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I am joined here with our Deputy Director, Linda Cronin. We're going to divide our slides into the two of us speaking. I want to start by saying that the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the federally recognized tribes share many goals. Primarily, it's to help improve the economy and quality of life throughout rural America. We want to develop sound agricultural production practices, obviously enhance food safety, improve nutrition and health through our food assistance and nutrition education and promotion programs, and to manage and protect our nation's lands and natural resources. Just so you know, the size of USDA, we have over 100,000 employees around the globe. We have 8 mission areas and 17 agencies within the department. And we are currently working under the direction of Secretary Sonny Perdue. Today, you can go on to the next slide. I'm going to highlight 3 basic areas. Actually, but Linda and I are going to highlight 3 basic areas. We're going to give an overview of our office, the Office of Tribal Relations. We're going to introduce you to the array of programs and impacts using the Farm Bill as the best example, and provide an introduction to the efforts that USDA is implementing to assist through the CARES Act funding, as well as other resources that are available. I do want to be very clear, as we move on to the next slide, while this webinar is here to give you an introduction to our office, please understand that our small but mighty Office of Tribal Relations is made up of 5 folks, and each of us, myself included, is available to any of you at any time. You can use telephone, email, text, whatever your preferred mode of communication is, to reach out to any of us for your entryway into the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we will make sure that we connect you with the experts that we have in the department or through our cooperative agreement with the Intertribal Agricultural Council and Zach and his team to make sure that you have the access to information and the resources necessary to succeed. The Office of Tribal Relations is housed directly within the Office of the Secretary. We facilitate the relationship between USDA agencies our nation's tribes, tribal organizations, American Indian and Alaska Native citizens. Our office facilitates, USDA's commitment to the legal government-to-government relationship between USDA and the federally recognized tribes. We are your primary point of contact for consultation, matters relevant to Indian country, whatever that might be. We are here to work to ensure that all of USDA's applicable programs and policies are efficient, easy to understand, that they're accessible, and that they are developed in consultation with the stakeholders that they impact. So, for example, on this slide, it talks about advising the secretary. Our primary role underneath him is to make sure our intergovernmental relationship with you is honored. That is primary. Outreach is secondary. We are your one-stop shop within the department to make sure that we review every regulation, to make sure that Indian country is considered, to find out if consultation is necessary, if listening sessions, discussions are relevant, and that our inter and intra-agency component is honored. There is another thing that's not on this slide that, that the role that OTR has, and that is we are USDA's representative in the newly reinvigorated White House Council on Native American Affairs. We serve with every, and represent USDA on this council with every other agency in the executive branch. We are there to lead when necessary, collaborate at every opportunity, and support when also whenever appropriate, to make sure that our USDA programs and services are included, as well as our advocacy on your behalf. And I mean that not in the inappropriate way of advocating, but making sure that your voice is heard based on what we have heard from our constituency conversations, our interaction with the Native Farm Bill Coalition and other stakeholders. Next slide, please. There are many laws and authorities that guide us to complete our work at USDA. We are here for implementation. As you all know very clearly, Congress is there to pass legislation. From that, the Farm Bill is the largest. This piece of legislation lays the groundwork for the direction of the department. It keeps us moving forward. Most recently, the 2018 Farm Bill was passed in December of 18, as it says on the slide. It is enormous. It's $867 billion. It's got 12 separate titles, including nutrition, rural development, forestry, and the like. And there are more than 60 tribal specific provisions. I want to be very clear on this. This is not your only opportunity for access to programs and services. This is in addition to the rest of the Farm Bill. In this most recent Farm Bill, we've got pilot programs through that 638 Self-Governance Authority that are housed within the Food and Nutrition Service and the Forest Service. We're going to get to a little bit more on that moving forward. I want to be very clear. USDA is this sleepy little agency that nobody thinks of as very important when compared to some of the other executive branch departments, but we are the actual only department that touches every American every single day through our support to farmers, ranchers, economic development, research, forestry, ensuring food access. And I could take up the entire time of the webinar if I went on, but that's just to name a few. We are your one-stop shop. Of this $867 billion bill, most programs are available to tribal governments, organizations, citizens. I do want to go back and talk about the historic nature of the more than 60 specific tribal provisions. And I do want to credit the folks in Indian country, specifically the Native Farm Bill Coalition, who for the first time that I'm aware of actually came together to truly advocate on behalf of Indian country. We were here to clarify when Congress had questions, but this is the way legislation gets passed and then gives us the ability to be able to implement. Again, I want to talk about those two pilot programs I quickly mentioned. When it comes to 638 and self-governance, these are opportunities that are essentially there to put the administration of our federal programs into the hands of tribes, if you request to do so, so that these tribes can administer the programs in a way that best supports the needs of your people, of your constituency. And while looking at the direction that USDA is going, this is an important place to start, as the Farm Bill usually covers around 5 years. I do want you to know that the Secretary completely supports the 638 authority, and we are negotiating the path forward to establish this across the department, not just in these two pilot programs. I am going to pause here. I'm going to hand over the next couple of slides to Linda Cronin, our Deputy Director within the Office of Tribal Relations. Linda?
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right, good. I'll go through these quickly. In addition to the Farm Bill, there are various other acts of legislation that influence the programs that are administered. The CARES Act is one of them. In addition to the funding made available in these programs, USDA has also exercised various efforts within existing authorities to assist. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide. We have Farm Service Agency and Rural Development here today, and they're going to talk about a lot of those impacts within their areas. But we want to just highlight two other things where we don't have folks here from. Next slide, please. So many of you have heard about the Farmers to Food Box program. This program was announced in April of 2020. And through this program, the Agricultural Marketing Service, or AMS, is partnering with national, regional, and local distributors to purchase up to $3 billion in fresh produce, dairy, and meat products, and from American producers. The programs will supply food boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables, dairy products, meat products, and a combination box of fresh produce, dairy, meat, and products, depending on the particular vendor. Distributors are packaging these into family-sized boxes and then transporting them to food banks, community and faith-based organizations, and other nonprofit serving America. Just to give you an idea, 50 million, as of July 29th, over 50 million food boxes have been invoiced. A third round is going to be launched on this program and that will impact distribution from September 1st through October 31st of 2020. Next slide. And then, of course, around food security, we can't forget our friends at the Food and Nutrition Service, where they have executed a lot of flexibilities, whether it's been with the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which intended to support effective operations and provide access to benefits, while also supporting social distancing in order to reduce the exposure of the coronavirus. For example, states can apply for online SNAP benefits. The CARES Act also allocated hundreds of millions to the Food and Nutrition Service. And included in that was $100 million to the food distribution program on Indian reservations. And this covers additional costs around infrastructure and food. FNS is currently distributing those funds. Throughout the pandemic, USDA has also taken a part in regular calls with the National Association of Food Distribution Programs, the NAFDPR board, to address COVID and other FDPR issues as they arise. FNS has also held a tribal consultation on that self-governance authority that what Diane mentioned earlier. and there'll be another one coming on that as well. Also, funding for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, or the TFAP, as many of you may have.
I think we might have lost connection. Diane, do you want to jump back in here? Can you hear me, Steph?
Yep, I can hear you okay. It looks like Diane. Can you hear us, Diane or Linda?
Uh-oh, I think.
Yeah, I don't see them as panelists anymore, so maybe we can go
Yeah,
on to the
Diane.
development slides and.
Oh,
I'm
Diane.
back in. Sorry about
Oh.
that. I had a redial. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. So I
problem.
hope that you all heard. I lost Linda as she was talking about Emergency Food Assistance Program, the TFAP program. Did she complete it with WIC and the like?
No, she dropped off right about there.
Okay. All right. So, based on that slide, we do have funding for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is called TFAP. We have processed waivers from many states, and USDA has processed many waivers from states and tribes for programs like the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, and we have engaged with partnerships with specific groups to deliver millions of meals. We have included the FNS specific website on their specifics, but in the interest of time and respect for our fellow presenters, we can move to the next slide. USDA has been keeping up, making sure that all of the actions and the programs and services and our successes, as well as concerns and questions, have been noted on our website, usda.gov/coronavirus. You can get links there to every single mission area and agency specific coronavirus relief effort through that one-stop shop. I do want to close this out again in the interest of time to plead with you. We want to hear from you. Contact us at any time. You can subscribe to our newsletter. We encourage you to check out our website. We encourage you to call, text, like I said, email. Our contact information is there, but for those of you on this call, I'm going to give you my personal cell number and my email address that you may use at any time, and this phone does take text. You can reach me at area code 202-836-0791, 202-836-0791. My direct email is Diane, D-I-A-N-E, Cullo, C-U-L-L-O, at usda.gov. We are public servants. We are here to help. And I hope that you take advantage of all the opportunities to contact us and to work with us. Thanks for your time. I'm going to hand it over to the next person on the panel.
Thank you, Diane. My name's Ted Bulow, and I'm the tribal coordinator for USDA Rural Development. I live and work in the Denver, Colorado area, but today I'm coming to you from the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe people and the Ojibwe tribes. I'm in northern Minnesota visiting my family, so I feel very fortunate to be with you today, and also very fortunate to be spending some time with my family. I wanted to start today's presentation with just thanking Oweesta and thanking my colleagues from USDA, including the Office of Tribal Relations. I work with them weekly, if not almost every day, coordinating our programs. So we work very close to one another, hand in glove, at addressing tribes issues and accessing rural development programs, making sure tribes are aware of our programs. And I'm glad to be on today's call. Once again, I also want to thank our friend Zach Ducheneau for partnering with us on today's call as well. So rural development does have a COVID-specific website. So whether you're an ag producer, or rural small business, or you're interested in the accommodations we've made for our intermediary lenders or our water borrowers or electric borrowers, this is the one stop to find out about all the different adjustments we've made to our programs after the onset of the virus. There's frequently asked questions. There's a long list of all the different accommodations we've made listed by program that you can read through. So I wanted to start with that particular resource. Next slide, Stephanie. The next slide shows a specific resource that we made in partnership with our External Affairs Office. It is a COVID-19 federal resource guide specifically for rural areas. It does have a tribal section within it. It's pretty broad. It gives folks a good idea of the types of resources that are available for rural communities and tribes. And it's pretty easy to navigate. Happens to be the most often downloaded resource rural development's ever had. So it's listed on that same COVID-19 page that I mentioned before, or you can just follow the URL as it's listed to the website here. Next slide, please. One of the programs that rural development received more money through the CARES Act to administer is our BNI CARES Act program. So BNI stands for the Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program. It usually, in the traditional program, we cannot support agricultural producers or ag operations or production ag, but we received specific and different authority through this particular program. So I wanted to make sure I started today's presentation with this program. We received about $20 million in funding, which allows rural development to guarantee up to $1 billion of loans in the program. It's important to note that you would go to a lender, customarily a commercial lender, which would provide the financing, and rural development provides a guarantee behind that financing to make that loan possible. Some of the program specifics and how it differs from the traditional business and industry loan guarantee program is that first, loans have to be made to prepare for, or respond to the economic challenges created by COVID-19. The second is that loans have to be used for working capital. In the traditional program, that's one of the eligible uses of funds. In the CARES Act program, it's the only way that funds can be used. Maximum allowable repayment terms are increased to 10 years. So those eligible applicants will get longer to repay those particular loans. Eligible loan purposes include payroll costs, health care benefits, salaries, principal and interest payments, rent, leases, utilities, inventory, and supplies. So this will be a nice resource for tribes, for tribal enterprises, for tribal member-owned businesses, as well as ag producers where eligible, to get through this particularly challenging economic time. All loans have a higher guarantee percentage. It's a straight 90% guarantee, which means rural development protects that lender from 90% of the loss when they make those loans. And the fees are tacked at lower than standard rates as well, at 2%. So it's more affordable, repayment periods are longer, and the guarantee percentage is higher to incentivize more lenders to use the program. So more information can be found on that program on the website. Next slide, please. There are specific accommodations made in the program, like I mentioned, specifically for ag producers. So those ag producers that do not meet the criteria for Farm Service Agency or FSA loans are authorized to use the program. Once again, it's for working capital. So if you don't meet the criteria for FSA loans, or If your request exceeds what Farm Service Agency can provide through their guaranteed loan program, ag producers can also use this business and industry guaranteed loan program through the CARES Act. And eligible uses are ag production expenses, including inventory, feed, seed, fertilizer, and chemicals, livestock, excluding livestock for breeding and supplies. So that's very new. If you have questions about it, you can always circle back with me or our local staff to find more out specifically about the BNI CARES Act program. Next slide, please. Wanted to do a quick commercial for our intermediary relending programs. For those intermediary lenders that are on the phone, these programs did not receive any more CARES Act funding, but there are ongoing core programs to help support intermediary local lenders, including Native Community Development financial institutions. So they don't have clear-cut accommodations on how we can work with ag producers, but we can work with ag-related businesses through those intermediaries. So those programs, just in a quick summary, are a Rural Business Development Grant Program. That grant program is currently closed, so we'll be looking at fiscal year 2021 for additional appropriations and another funding round for the RBDG program. Then the Intermediary Lending Program and the Rural Micro-Entrepreneurial Assistance Program are other programs that intermediaries can use, and there's different application periods throughout any given fiscal year for those two programs respectively. Next slide. Wanted to also mention then some programs that rural development has specifically available for ag producers, even though they don't have any CARES Act specific funding. One is the Value Added Producer Grant Program. The other is the Rural Energy for America program. Both of them have relatively high matching dollar requirements. So whether an applicant could get another grant or leverage some of their own equity or funding, or work with a native CDFI or an intermediary lending to match those dollars. I wanted to make sure I mentioned them so that you're aware of them. The Value Added Producer Grant Program is there to help ag producers add value to a commodity that they might be producing, and then market that program market that commodity that's had the value added directly to buyers of their products, sort of cutting out the middleman and making sure more of that money is maintained in their own pocket, goes back to their own bottom line rather than being made by a middleman. Tribes, tribal enterprises, and tribal member ag producers can qualify for the program. It's a little bit tricky, but the two eligible purposes are feasibility studies and working capital again. So that application window is closed. We'll be looking at fiscal year 2021 for more funding in that program. And then the Rural Energy for America program is available to rural small businesses and ag producers to help finance rural energy systems or energy efficiency improvements to green an operation, as well as, once again, help that ag producer or rural small business keep more of their utility bill, in this case, keep that money in their pocket. So helps make those businesses more sustainable as well. If you have questions about either program, like I said, you can always circle back with me and or speak with our local staff wherever you might be. Next slide. Recently, the USDA and Rural Development announced our OneRD Guarantee Loan Initiative, where we are combining our guaranteed loan programs, four guaranteed loan programs, I should say, under one regulation. Those programs include the Business and Industry Loan Guarantee Program that I mentioned, the Rural Energy for America program, which I just mentioned, as well as our community facilities and our water and environmental programs. So know that in the coming months, there's going to be a comment period for the OneRD Guarantee Initiative. If you are an intermediary lender or a commercial lender and you're not aware of this initiative, please check out our website. Know that you can comment on the final rule through September 14th. And this rule will go into place October 1st. And it's really meant to, as you can see on the slide, consolidate programs, make our programs more easily accessible by lenders, which will free up more capital in rural areas, We hope to be quicker and more transparent through the process, have a single point lender approval. So if you're approved for one program, you're approved for all 4 programs, and give some additional options to lenders. There was a listening session today for that particular initiative, and we're going to have our final listening session on August 19th. So got a whole web page set up on that process, but wanted to make sure I also did a quick commercial for the OneRD Guarantee initiative before I handed it off to FSA. Next slide. This is my last slide. You see my contact information there. I think I probably should have put our state offices first, because a lot of our programs are administered through USDA rural development staff locally. You can find all the contact information for our state directors and our different program directors and staff on that website. And if you ever run into any challenge or trouble at reaching anyone, please just reach out to me and I'd be happy to make those connections for you. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Esther with the Farm Service Agency. Esther.
Thanks, Ted. I hope you all can hear me okay. I got a notice earlier that I have a kind of spotty internet connection. So hopefully that connection will stay intact for the next few minutes. I also want to echo Ted's thanks and just thank Oweesta as well as the Office of Tribal Relations for organizing this and having us here today. My name is Esther Lynn. I work for the Farm Service Agency. I work in the outreach office. My boss, Latrice Hill, the Director of Outreach, was supposed to be here today. She sends her regrets. But I am also joined by a couple of colleagues in our farm loans and our farm program areas who can help answer any kind of more detailed questions if they come up later during the Q&A section. I saw a couple questions earlier in the Q&A box, just asking about programs and offices that serve farmers directly at USDA. And so if it's okay, I'll just take the first minute and just give a really quick introduction to FSA for those who aren't familiar. You know, we consider our agency to be kind of the front door to the US Department of Agriculture. We offer loans primarily geared towards farmers and ranchers. And these are programs that can help producers get started as well as grow their operations. So we offer things like loans, disaster assistance, risk management, conservation programs, and more. We have about 2,100 county offices across the country. We are working mostly remotely right now. So I can share a link later for anybody who's interested in just checking on the status of their local offices, but we are able to work by phone appointments. And then for any offices that are taking in-person appointments, we are asking that producers set up a time in order to come in and receive service. Next slide, please. So can anybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Next
You're
slide,
good.
please,
You're
Stephanie.
good, Esther.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I got worried for a second. We've been getting a lot of questions about one particular program, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. So I'll cover a little bit of that today. And then I will also talk a little bit about our disaster assistance programs that we offer at FSA. Next slide. So with the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or CFAP, you know, it is Farm Service Agency's COVID relief program aimed towards producers, so farmers and ranchers. There are a number of other COVID relief programs at USDA, and different entities can apply for those. Ours is geared towards farmers and ranchers. This program essentially offers direct payments to producers in response to the pandemic. We are offering payments that provide some partial relief to producers who've experienced sales losses as well as market disruptions to their operation. There was a set of requirements that we looked at in terms of determining different eligible commodities, but we cover specialty crops, non-specialty crops, livestock, dairy, as well as wool. And I would just encourage you to go onto our website down at the bottom here, farmers.gov/CFAP, where there's a more comprehensive eligibility list for each of these different commodity segments. And I would encourage you to keep checking on the eligibility status. At the beginning of this process for this new program, we asked producers and the public to send in information to us about different crops and livestock so that we could make an assessment around price declines and market and supply chain disruptions to those particular commodities. And just a couple weeks ago, we added some newly eligible commodities to the list. We anticipate that we will be making another announcement very, very soon on a next bucket of eligible commodities. And so just please check back because if it's not eligible now, we hope that we can make it eligible very soon. We are taking applications online at this time, but producers can always submit an application in, the traditional way that, they've interacted with us before. So, we can take applications by mail as well as by fax. We know that for some producers, internet access is a challenge. So if submitting an application online is not feasible, we have stood up a dedicated call center for this program, the CFAP call center. And that call center can actually provide one-on-one technical assistance to producers. So if a producer is looking to make an application and has a particular question, they can call that center. If they are having trouble filling out their application, the employee staffing the call center can actually help a producer fill out the application, each kind of category, and then send the application back to the producer to review and sign. So we're providing a little bit of additional technical assistance, just understanding that producers are under a lot of stress right now. One other thing that I'll point out with this program is that you do not have to be an existing customer and participating in our other programs to apply for CFAP. So we are taking applications from farmers and ranchers who have never worked with USDA before. Next slide, please. Well, actually, Stephanie, there's a number of slides here. If you wouldn't mind skipping down to the disaster resources slide at the bottom. There are a number of, and Stephanie's scrolling through them now, there are a number of disaster assistance programs that we offer to farmers and ranchers. Just because of time limits, I won't go over every program in detail because we have so many, but we do offer disaster assistance programs for both crops and livestock, even honeybees and farm-raised fish. We offer payments as well as loans. And there are different requirements and eligibility for each, but for our disaster assistance payment programs, I think the most important thing that I would want to make sure to mention is that producers should be staying in regular contact with their local office. We do ask that producers submit regular acreage reports with the Farm Service Agency in order to maintain their eligibility for these programs. And so we are still taking acreage reports now. If you're working with any producers and you want to make sure that they know that, for the next few weeks, we are going to be taking acreage reports. So in terms of the types of natural disasters that we cover under our programs, there are typically two categories. One is damaging weather conditions. So that might be drought, flood, excessive rain, snow, freeze, hurricanes, and there's more. I won't go through the whole list. And then we also cover natural disasters that are related to natural occurrences. So things like fire, pests, and disease. The types of things that we can cover under these programs include grazing losses, livestock deaths that are above normal mortality because of disaster, crop losses, whether it's low yield or inventory loss or prevented planting because of disaster again. And then we also offer emergency loans in addition to our normal operating and ownership loans. We offer a number of COVID relief type of flexibilities within our other existing programs. If there's additional time later, I can go through that, Lanalle, unless there's time for me to kind of just talk very briefly about those now.
You can share, Esther.
Okay, yeah, so I would say, across all our programs, we are trying to be as flexible as possible with our customers. And so, one of the things that applies across most of our programs is, us trying to make electronic signing of documents and electronic interactions a lot more available to our customers. So we do have a variety of kind of document sharing and signing abilities that we're able to offer so that producers don't have to come into the office if they're not able to. In our farm loan programs, I would say there are flexibilities on the loan making side as well as the loan servicing side. So on the loan making side, I would say that we are offering providing producers more time to submit information for their applications. On the loan servicing side, we are also providing kind of extended timeframes for producers in working with their local loan officer. One of the things that I want to point out is that we have something called a disaster set aside. And this is where a producer can delay a loan payment, essentially, a loan payment that's due between now and next September and move it to the end of their loan. We typically offer disaster set asides when it comes to when there's a disaster designation for a particular area. But because of the pandemic, we are also offering a COVID disaster set aside, and producers should reach out to their loan officer to talk about that if they need to. On the farm program side, I'll just highlight two. We offer something called a marketing assistance loan, which is a loan for producers to help them meet their cash flow needs when commodity prices are low. So we help them basically delay kind of the selling of their commodities. And so for existing producers, we are extending the time frame for when producers have to pay back their loan for the marketing assistance loan. We also offer something called a farm storage facility loan, and that is essentially financing to assist with handling, storage, and transport equipment for producers for their commodities. And so for that particular program, we're offering, again, electronic submission of proof of meeting requirements for that program. And we are also delaying any foreclosures, accelerations, liquidations for that program. Sorry, I just ran through a lot, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those at the end. I will also, Stephanie, next slide, highlight that we have state outreach coordinators. Next slide. Thank you. We also have state outreach coordinators that are based at the state level that serve farmers and ranchers as well as stakeholder organizations. They can be your primary point of contact if you're looking to understand a program or if you're looking for a speaker, somebody to come in to explain and provide some technical assistance on FSA programs. We have a list of folks available at that link. And with that, I will hand it back to Lanalle.
Thank you, Esther. Lots of good information. And last but not least, we have Zach Ducheneau up to speak. Take it away, Zach.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to Oweesta and our friends at the OTR for including us in the conversation here. I'll be pretty brief so we can get into hopefully some of the discussion with the participants. But I'm Zach Ducheneau, Executive Director of the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We're a nonprofit whose membership is all federally recognized tribes and Alaskan Native villages. And our service population is all of the 80,000 counted Indian farmers and ranchers. That includes tribes, tribal organizations, tribal farms, and those aspiring to get into that realm. We have 4 main areas that we work within. First and foremost, which is most relevant for today's conversation, is our technical assistance network. In that technical assistance network, you have the embodiment of an owner's manual for using the programs of the United States Department of Agriculture. Our staff can walk you through the particulars based on input from those of you that are out there and our experience in helping others, and help you figure out which particular program or service that's offered by our friends at the USDA is right for you. We also speak very fluent BIA lingo and also understand tribal customs and practices. So we hope to be able to work with all of you throughout the current pandemic. and beyond. And we've got a network of technical assistant specialists who can come out to your farm or your ranch or your hoop house or your garden and provide that assistance in person at no cost to you. With that, I think I'll just wrap it up and welcome you all to the webinar, and we'll get into some of the other talking points through the course of some discussion, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Appreciate that. And I'd like to welcome all the panelists back. If you would all unmute, we do have a few questions that we want to pose and leave it open to who would like to respond. And then we'll go into some Q&A with the participants on the webinar. So, and if any one of you can respond, is how can, if you can give some information around how can intermediaries partner with USDA to support local farmers and ranchers, be it through technical assistance or potential grant programs and such?
I'll go ahead and start, Lanalle. One of the most valuable things that an intermediary can provide is that real world anecdotal experience to the prospective customer based on what they've experienced and helping others navigate that, kind of serving as a guide. There are many ways into that realm within the USDA. There are several opportunities for nonprofit intermediaries to apply for technical assistance, grant funding, agreements of other types in order to provide those services out there in their own communities. I had mentioned some of the relending stuff, and that'd probably be a good place to pivot to that.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Some folks might know us or maybe sensed in my comments, we're kind of the least Aggie agency within USDA at rural development, but we do have programs that are specifically tailored for ag producers, which I mentioned. We also have a couple programs that are geared towards intermediaries, especially around cooperative development in rural areas. And some tribes, including our friends at Intertribal Ag Council, have used those programs in the past. The first I'll mention is the Socially Disadvantaged Groups Grant. Once again, it's a little bit constrained in that it has to be revolving around the cooperative development model, which looks different in Indian country, and we realize that. So if there's ways we can work through nonprofit organizations or tribal entities that would be eligible for the program to provide that assistance to ag producers on the reservation or American Indian Alaska Native ag producers off of reservations. That's one model where we work with intermediaries. We also work through rural cooperative development centers through ongoing grant support so that they can provide technical assistance back out into communities and to different types of cooperatives that might be forming, many of which are around ag. And then those programs that Zach mentioned, they're not particularly tailored for ag, but where there's ag businesses, that's kind of an easy transition for those intermediaries to use our programs for that. And to Esther's point, we're also trying to be as creative and as responsive as we can to COVID. So if there's specific needs that rural development isn't meeting through our intermediary programs, we're always open to hear them, whether it's through the Office of Tribal Relations or through me or directly with our leadership in Washington, D.C. So just bring those to our attention and we'll try to work through them as best we can.
Hi, Lanalle. Sorry.
Thank you, Ted. Go ahead, Esther.
Hi. So at this time, we don't have any grant programs for intermediaries in terms of partnering with farmers and ranchers. We have traditionally had cooperative agreements, but we haven't had a cooperative agreement in FSA for a couple of years now. I will say that intermediaries can also partner with Farm Service Agency through the Guaranteed Lender Program. I'm hoping my colleague Mike Moore from our farm loan programs is also on the line. I'm hoping that he can just talk for 30 seconds about that.
About the guarantee program?
Mm-hmm.
The guarantee is similar to what RD talked about. We don't directly make the loan. You go to another lender. It's going to be made with them, and we're kind of behind it as an underwriter. Typically, we're using it to provide funds that the bank may not have felt was quite to their specs, whatever you want to call it. So they get the guarantee. The dollars are a lot higher as far as that than our direct funds. We can go up to a little over $1.1 million on the guaranteed loans. And we're kind of back behind it. And I guess while you're on here and you got me talking, I wanted to add one thing. One of the things you talked about was emergency loans, and we get questions about, are emergency loans eligible under COVID? Basically, the presidential declaration would trigger an emergency loan. However, we don't, under our current system, have anything that would consider an economic loss. Right now, we either have to have a production loss, which is 30% of normal production, or we have to have a physical loss, such as your building gets damaged or tractor, you've had them get flooded or whatever. So unfortunately, we cannot make an EM loan right now that's going to cover COVID.
Lanalle, could I add one more thing that I forgot? Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Esther.
thanks, Mike. And sorry, I'll let you finish, but just to maybe clarify that just a little bit, our normal operating loans and farm ownership loans are all available at this time still.
Lanalle, I wanted to
you, Esther.
mention
Go
one thing from rural development that I forgot to mention. So you might have been kind of wondering why I was mentioning the OneRD guarantee initiative, which again is a new rule that consolidates 4 of our loan guarantee programs. What I failed to mention, and it kind of is related to intermediaries, is that there is a process for non-regulated lenders to become approved lenders in our programs. And in that new regulation, there's a specific section that talks about non-regulated lenders becoming approved lenders for the 4 programs, which are business and industry, REAP, CF, and water environmental programs. And there's a specific section which allows us to be flexible for those intermediaries that are focused on providing loans on tribal trust land. So I think hopefully that makes it a little clearer why I mentioned it and why it's relevant to this slide. And there's a chance for folks to review that particular language, which is very short, and see if it's going to help or maybe provide some feedback on how we could clarify or tweak that language a little bit as we implement it. So if anyone's interested in that, I can get the actual site reference to that part of the reg, but wanted to make sure I didn't fail to mention that.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you all for your response. So another question, in a larger sense, can you talk about how the USDA programs might be able to support communities in supporting themselves, specifically around food security? Some communities are having to ship in food and donations, but would like to roll out strategies for food sovereignty where they can support local farming and ranching to address this. Are there programs that would directly fit those needs? And how is the USDA looking at food security in communities at this time?
I'll go ahead and start again. I think what's really important is that we all in Indian country and our service providers and our federal partners start to realize that food production is economic development. And until we start to look at it through that lens and try to move more of the economy of this food system back to our rural communities, we're going to continue to see these pockets of persistently impoverished communities. 11 to 14 cents of every food dollar ever gets back to the producer. I would wager that it's probably at least 75% of that in Indian country. So probably 8 to 10 cents of every food dollar is getting back to your Indian producers. So there's not a lot of money circulating there. We end up importing food at high cost. And if we start to rebuild our reservation food economies, then we're starting to put the pieces in place that'll make us more resilient and able to stand the types of stresses on the food system that we're experiencing. And we will have that economy that's insulated from outside forces.
And this is Linda. I'd like to add, it's really been an honor and pleasure to see some of the efforts that youth are making around food sovereignty and working with the elders to learn more about what's happening. So it's a very exciting topic, and it's something I get really pumped up about. I'm just going to answer like broadly, and then I'm going to turn it to Farm Service Agency because they have a lot of programs and services. You know, just like growing food as a system, there's pieces across the department that are addressing that. Whether you're getting a farm to school grant, or you have a 4-H program, or you have FERTEP agents on the ground helping to provide technical assistance. And of course, our friends at IAC and the technical assistance they provide, they're a great resource. Coming up with the food code and the work that University of Arkansas is doing to try to kind of help like step that back a little bit. There's a lot of grants and research that's being done, beginning farmer and rancher programs and all kinds of a broad array of things. So working with someone like Zach Bogue and others to kind of get that broad landscape of work that's happening, I think is really important. And then, of course, I'll turn it over to Esther to talk about a lot of the programs that are available through Farm Service Agency directly to the farmer and rancher that are available.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Like Linda said, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning of my presentation, you know, our programs primarily serve farmers and ranchers at the individual level. And so we do offer farm loans. So we offer financing for operating expenses as well as for farm ownership. So real estate, permanent structures, that kind of a thing on an ag operation. We also offer a number of other safety net type programs. So our disaster assistance programs, I think, are really key in this moment. We've been getting a lot of questions about those. I think as I think about community access to these types of programs that would support farmers and ranchers and support their success, I think a lot about technical assistance, and I think about the people who are providing on-ramps to help people access our programs and to help translate our programs, because we have a lot of technical speak. And so I want to highlight in particular two types of individuals that we have. We have for Farm Service Agency, we have state outreach coordinators at the local level who are able to do a lot of one-on-one work with producers, helping to make sure that they understand our programs, as well as get connected to other supportive resources if needed in the ag community. We have also, because of the 2018 Farm Bill, we have also stood up a beginning farmer program. And so there is a department beginning farmer coordinator who is helping to coordinate state beginning farmer coordinators at the local level who can help farmers and ranchers access our programs. Linda, did you want me to kind of speak to any specific FSA program in particular, or is that okay?
Hey,
I think that's good. I think, oh, go ahead.
This is Mike, and I was going to add one thing. One of the programs that we initiated a few years ago is called the Microloan Operating Program. And those are loans under $50,000 for either the operating or to purchase land. And it's amazing how many of those have been used by people to start small operations where they sell either at their own roadside stand, at farmers markets. Some of them even do, CSA type operations. So we've done a lot of those and sold a lot of produce in areas where it wasn't readily available. One of the things that's amazed me is that we've had a lot of people who've applied who've come from certain parts of the world, and they're missing a food that they think that their community would that can't find, so they start growing it. We've had people growing bitter melon and other things that I had to look up to even see what they were, but they've got a built-in ready market with their own groups there, so that those have really worked well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
And this
Mike, thanks.
Yeah, and so this is the farmer and rancher piece, but back to Zach's point, there's also the value added where that can really be a big economic driver in the community. So Ted, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about some of the programs that rural development has, like the value added grant program or anything else to kind of add to the conversation.
Sure, I talked a little bit about value added earlier, but once again, it's called the Value Added Producer Grant. Those tribal entities, tribes, tribal economic development corporations, tribal farms and ranches, as well as tribal member owned ag operations. If you're raising a commodity, let's use corn and turning it into popcorn as an example, the grants are there to help with feasibility studies and for operating support for that business to sort of create that product and to market it to new or larger markets in other places. Once again, to Zach's point, the point of the program is to help farmers, ag producers, keep more of that money from the commodity that they're producing into their own pocket, keeping that money in their own pocket. So it does have a steep match requirement. It's very limited in the types of eligible project activities that can be funded. So for instance, if you're in need of real estate or a new building or any type of equipment, other than in one example where it's food safety sort of equipment cannot be part of a project with those funds, and the matching requirements require that the matching funds have to be for an eligible purpose as well. So I could go into the weeds very deeply, but just know that it has some sort of, I would call them gotcha moments in the program. And we have staff to help you work through those issues as they might arise. I also wanted to quickly mention our community facilities program, because we can work directly with tribes or tribal colleges or tribal school systems to help with community gardens. So going back to that youth program aspect of this, if a tribe wants to develop a community garden where they're using it not only to produce some fresh fruits or vegetables or meat for their community, and it has a learning component to it, the CF program can be used for equipment, and the loan portion can be used for facilities. So I'd encourage folks to think of that as a resource in that realm as well. Thanks.
And I'm sorry, just to bring it back to the farmer and rancher piece, I think we've been amiss by not mentioning the Natural Resource Conservation Service that provides cost share assistance up to 90% of the cost on various things, whether it's rotational grazing and other conservation type practices that I won't go into all of them. There's so many of them, but they also will help with soils and provide other technical assistance, conservation planning, and all of those kinds of things, which are also an important part of the bottom line. So sorry, I should have mentioned that before.
Thank you. That was very good information to share. And this will be our final question to the panelists. I do want to leave some time for the participants to ask some questions. They're actually throwing some there in the Q&A segment, so we want to go ahead and address those as well. But in this time where producers are having to pivot and adjust, are there any flexibilities to participate in the programs or for your existing participants? I know many of you have highlighted, so if you just want to go back and re-highlight, that would be great.
Sorry, I was typing a response to a different question, but I guess I would start by going back to that first slide that I showed that had some content in there. The RD COVID-19 resource page walks through all the different accommodations. And as we as USDA employees are navigating these uncertain and unhealthy times, we know that tribes are doing the same. So our utmost concern is for the health and well-being of your community and the people that are living in those communities. And we want to be there alongside of you virtually, so we're not spreading any diseases, but to to be there as a resource, and we've made sort of program by program accommodations to make sure that whether you've borrowed money for a house, whether you're reporting on a grant, whether you've got a large community facility loan with us if you're a tribe, that the pressure to repay us has been relieved for the time being. So I would encourage you to look at those specific program responses we've had, and then know that the BNI CARES Act is our big remaining program, and that's available through September of 2021, and it's not forgivable. So we're expecting that to be sort of a long, slow burn of that funding. So know that that resource is going to be there until the funds are exhausted, or for another year and a month. So there's plenty of time to work with a commercial lender on your operating capital need for those BNI CARES Act funds.
I would also like to add on the Office of Tribal Relations site, there was a coronavirus site, and that one is a department-wide one, and there's buckets on that site based on what an individual's interests are, and there's some Q&As and there's some resources on there. As things change and evolve, that's a good place to look. And I'm going to do a shameless plug. Also on the Office of Tribal Relations website, there is a place where you can subscribe to our newsletter that goes out every 2 weeks. And in that newsletter, we try to pull all the news and information and announcements and things that are happening across the department into one resource that you can get in your email. Anyway, I just want to put that little plug in there because that might be a good source of information as well.
It's a good listserv. I would just add, I already talked about flexibility, so I won't belabor that, but I will make sure that when you will get the updated slide deck, that will include the link for where you can get all the information about our COVID-related flexibilities in our programs. That is farmers.gov/coronavirus. And so we detail, kind of like Ted was talking about with RD, we do have a page where we detail for Farm Service Agency and our programs for producers, what kinds of flexibilities we're able to offer within our existing programs.
Wonderful, thank you. I know Zach had to jump off for another call, but we still have our amazing experts here as well. So there is a question that was posed in the Q&A box, and this was from Rolina, and she asked, great point on food producers' impact on economic development. She's from Hawaii, and 90% of food consumed in the state is imported. Her question is, are there TA programs that them as a loan fund, Community Development Corporation, can enroll in to better assist Hawaiian community of food producers? Any one of you can respond.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if Mike is still on. Mike, can I bring you back to maybe talk about I think when we were talking about the guaranteed lender, our guaranteed loans earlier, I think what would be good to highlight is the types of lenders who can apply to be a guaranteed lender with FSA. I wonder if you can just highlight that a little bit, because I know that we also have like CDFIs on the call.
Most of the guaranteed lenders we have do have some kind of ag background, ag lending, because they have to apply to us. We've got different levels of guaranteed lenders, but if they get up to what we call a PLP, which is a preferred lender status, they've done a lot of guarantees, and they have a lot of experience with the ag community. The only problem I think with all of these is ultimately ours are loans, and they have to go to the owner operator. So it's not really a community type loan that would work.
Thank you, Michael. Ted, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to mention a couple of our programs. So our program has state office that serves Hawaii and the territories in the Pacific Ocean. So if you don't know how to get in contact with our staff, our state office is on the Big Island in Hilo. So I'd be happy to get you in contact with them. The Rural Business Development Grant Program that I mentioned as an intermediary program, that can be used for both capital and for technical assistance. The catch there is that it has to be to help support rural small businesses. So depending on how deep you would be going into ag production, direct ag production, there might be ways that we can help with that Rural Business Development Grant Program. So I'd encourage you to follow up with our staff there about that program. And then a program I didn't mention before is a program called the Rural Community Development Initiative Grant Program, which is kind of a train the trainer or provide technical assistance to other entities program rather than providing technical assistance to a specific individuals or people. So Oweesta Corporation has been a user of that program in the past, and as a nonprofit, they then use that money to provide technical assistance to other CDFIs or emerging loan funds. So they're not providing, once again, that assistance to an individual for business development or for home ownership. They're providing it to other entities. So if there's a way to structure an application where you as a nonprofit would be providing services to specific municipalities or specific homelands or different organizations serving those homelands in Hawaii, the Rural Community Development Grant Initiative might be a resource as well.
Thank you. And I want to encourage the participants, if you do have any questions, you can pop them into the chat box, and then, or you can use the Q&A. And I just wanted to highlight one of the previous questions as well, and thank you for the response from Zach and Esther to Justin's question about newbies in the ag business. And then also with Denise Zuni mentioned that many of them are doing smaller plots of agriculture work, farm areas of less than an acre. So if, do you have anything to add to those two comments and services or products TA being provided to new agriculture farmers and whatnot, as well as the acreage size, the size of the business?
Yeah, FSA is probably where agencies that should speak to that. So, you know, for farmer facing programs, again, you know, I would say, please check out Farm Service Agency, one of the many USDA agencies, as Diane said earlier. But like Linda said earlier, I would be remiss in also not mentioning some of our other customer facing agencies like the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Those are all, they also offer programs that are producer facing. You can see kind of a summary and help yourself kind of navigate through the myriad programs that we have by going to farmers.gov. Or if it's helpful to follow up afterwards, I'm happy to have a conversation with folks about our different programs and helping to break them down, and also making sure that you get connected to a local person with USDA to talk to about our services and resources. And I would also just to the small producer question, so producers who have smaller operations, we work with producers of all sizes. So, you know, I think there are a lot of stories about FSA working with maybe larger, more established operations, but we do work with producers of all sizes, of all backgrounds, growing all types of different things with very different kind of business structures. So, or business models. And so, you know, we work with producers who do, you know, urban ag, to producers who are doing aquaponics and things like that. So no matter what your size, you know, we are interested in talking to you and exploring how our programs can serve you.
And this is Mike again. I'll add that we've actually worked with rooftop gardens, container farms, and it's amazing. We've been able to get farm numbers even for like a rooftop to where they can then get NAP coverage and some other things that to help them in growing crops in somewhat unusual places.
Mhm.
This
Linda,
is
did you want to
Linda.
add
I
something?
can't
Because I know you're FSA alumni, so did you want to add something?
Yeah. I just cannot stress enough the importance of anybody that's growing and has a farm, regardless of its size, to establish a relationship with their local service center, with a farm service agency, natural resource conservation service, to identify based on what they're growing and what they're doing, what resources may be available. And just like I gave a shameless plug for our website, I would say the same. Going in, even if you're not going to participate in a program, and establishing a farm number, working on for small acreage, you could get some advice from NRCS for conservation work and things that need to be done, and all of those things. And going into the office for the first time, I would implore that folks call the office first, because some offices go by appointment, especially right now, go by appointment only. But and see what documents or what information they need to bring into the office before they go in, because there's some initial kind of paperwork and establishment work that needs to be done. But once all that's kind of done, then it's going to be a lot easier when programs come up to sign up and get things in place, because you've already kind of have that relationship going and you've done kind of the baseline stuff. There's certain things that are required regardless of which program you're dealing with that could be taken care of. So I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, Linda, thank you for bringing that up. What Linda is talking about is essentially the process for kind of establishing a farm record with our office. And that essentially gets you kind of into our system so that we know, who you are, where you're growing, or where you're operating, and so that we have your contact information, like Linda said, to be able to share information with you about new programs that are rolling out the door, program deadlines, program changes, that kind of a thing. I know that it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes for some of our newer customers to start to reach out for the first time and visit a local office, or talk to a loan officer, or talk to one of our county offices. And so, I would just want to highlight again, we do have beginning farmer coordinators based at the state level who work across our programs. So not even just farm service agency programs, but other agencies that may have programs that can support you. They've done a lot of learning and reading to be able to help get you connected to those programs as well. So please feel free to reach out to those folks as kind of a first step. They are specifically assigned to work with new customers and to help make sure that you have a good and successful experience with us.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I do not see any additional questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, but I do have one final question for either of you, any of you. What do you see in the coming future, given the administration and current national global situation, to support communities, farmers, and ranchers, specifically Native, for long-term recovery from COVID? What do you see the needs being and how to address them? Basically, what's your long-term vision?
I think if you kind of use the Farm Bill and the COVID response as a template for the direction that things are going, there's a lot of needs that I think are becoming more mainstream and understood by people outside of folks that are working in Indian country. The historic number of tribal-specific provisions in the Farm Bill, the flexibilities that the department has put into place, and I think there's going to need to continue to be an ongoing dialogue. When we work with tribal leaders, we want to hear what their goals and objectives are for their communities, and then that way we can identify what resources might be there to support those goals and objectives. So, that's kind of a short answer on that, but that's kind of the movement of where things are going. So, I hope that helps. I don't know if Ted or Esther have anything else to add on that.
I would add one thing, and this might seem like a stretch, so give me just a few, I guess, minutes it might take to connect the dots, but rural development also has a number of broadband programs that are available And two programs that I didn't mention that also received CARES Act funding were our Reconnect broadband program, as well as our distance learning and telemedicine grant program. So farmers are living in rural areas, ag producers and farmers, just like a school, just like a tribe, just like a rural business, need high-speed internet for smart ag and for running their operation. So we're dependent now on future appropriations. So I have nothing to announce as far as program opportunities, but our agency's been very focused on increasing the infrastructure available for high-speed broadband in rural and tribal areas. So whether it's an existing rural telecommunications provider that's able to get a grant or a loan or a combination of those to build where they couldn't before, or a new tribal operation that meets the eligibility requirements, we're, I think, going to be continuing to try to find ways to continue to build out to the most remote areas of the country so that ag producers and tribes and folks have access to that high-speed infrastructure, which is necessary for commercial means, and especially in the time of COVID-19 is necessary for distance learning and for distance telemedicine, to make sure people are healthy and educated as they stay quarantined.
Thank you, Ted and Linda. We did have one question pop into the chat box, and we're still good on time here, so I definitely want to have you all respond to this. So is there a program or network of R&D people who are looking for farms to host their research?
That might be a follow-up question. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if anyone else does.
It's not a farm service agency program, but I can take a stab at partially answering this. With regard to research projects on farms, one place that you could look could be the SARE program. Hope I get this right. Let me just Google. Yeah, the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program. So it's funded by the National Institute for Food and Agriculture, which is one of our primary grant-making agencies at USDA. And producers, researchers, extension, and other entities can apply to receive grant funding to do research projects. And that might partially answer that. The Ag Marketing Service also has a really great USDA programs along the supply chain handout, which also talks through different programs that are kind of similar to SARE. And so we can maybe work with the Office of Tribal Relations to get a link for that sent out. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, and then also ARS has some stuff, some programs as well as NEFA. So we'll put together a collection of contacts. Some of those are grant programs that may or may not be occurring at this time. And a lot of the grants get posted on grants.gov. And also when those grants are available, we do put them out on in the newsletter as well. But we'll put together something for y'all.
Wonderful.
I was going to add a couple of our partners too, Lanalle. This isn't in Rural Development's wheelhouse, but I think the land grant institutions, whether they be the 1862 state-based or the tribal colleges, the 1994s, are good resources, and the American Indian Higher Education Consortium could be a good partner, someone to reach out to see what might be going on at the different tribal land grant institutions. And then Linda had mentioned the University of Arkansas's Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative. So there's more and more people in this space. And as they're sort of coupled with the land grant institution itself, I think they can be a wealth of information. And then our friends at the Native American Ag Fund have a lot of experience and depth into research around Native ag producers' needs and food sovereignty and those types of things. So they might be a good resource as well.
Thank you. And if you, oh, go ahead, Linda.
I just got excited. I'm sorry, I got so excited. I had the honor to see a project that was being done that was looking at how corn had historically been grown, and they're doing an experiment between, like, you know, the modern ways of doing corn and versus the traditional ways. And it was really a really cool project as an example of something that was done in that arena. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Linda. I feel your excitement. That's awesome. We don't have any other additional questions in the chat box or the Q&A box. For the participants, if you look in the chat box, we've dropped links and resources there. We will also send them in a follow-up email after the webinar along with the recording. And also, I believe we responded to all the Q&A questions there. So with that said, do any of you have any final comments? No, we're all good.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. And I
Thanks,
truly
Linda.
want to extend our appreciation for you all providing your expert knowledge around the resources, the numerous resources that are available. And I know the participants definitely have a lot of information to arm themselves during this time that we're in right now. So thank you again for being amazing panelists, and thank you participants for sitting with us, and I hope you have a lot of takeaways. If you have any questions, follow-up questions, feel free to email me, Lanalle@oweesta.org, and then I can forward it to our panelists for a response. You don't want to hear my response on agriculture because that's very limited there, but also check out our website. We have links for upcoming virtual trainings and such, so if you want to get on our listserv and for any additional ag opportunities, we definitely will share that out. So thank you all, and you have an amazing rest of your day and week, and stay safe and healthy. Positive vibes from Oweesta out to you all, and we hope to see you virtually soon.
Thank you, Lanalle.